30 years ago, one man's dream became our reality. And since, we've built and traveled an unforgettable journey together. Many names have paved this road to now, marking their time with heart and soul and sacrifice. And that's why our eyes will always see their faces in a flash of lightning, and why our voices will always echo with a roar of thunder.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the historic Tampa Theater. For this evening's special event, A Night with the Bolts, presented by Advent Health. Tonight, we'll take a trip down memory lane with Lightning alumni and broadcasters as we celebrate the 30th anniversary season of your Tampa Bay Lightning.
On December 6, 1990, the culmination of Phil Esposito's hard work pays off, and the Tampa Bay Lightning are born. And nearly 2 years later, after assembling a team through the expansion draft and retrofitting Expo Hall into a hockey rink, the inaugural game would finally take place.
This is it right here tonight, folks. It's the beginning of the dream.
And we are set to go, and hockey has arrived in the Sunshine State. In front, they score! What a tip in there by Contos!
With 4 goals by Chris Contos, punctuating a 7-3 win over Chicago in Game 1, the Lightning take a momentous first step into their first decade. 10 years, memorable firsts, growing pains, and lessons learned. From a raucous first season at the Fairgrounds, to Brian Bradley's 42-goal All-Star campaign, to the chants of Poopa rumbling across record crowds at the aptly named Thunderdome, to Coach Terry Crisp shepherding the first ever playoff appearance in the spring of 1996.
His shot blocked, deflected, score! Selivanov! The Tampa Bay Lightning win again in overtime!
Brian Bellows wins it in overtime for Tampa!
To christening a new downtown home in the fall.
Hook him on the dribble, he score!
Brian Bradley jammed it home off the centering pass as Richter got caught behind the net.
The Lightning had quickly built a solid foundation, with a slew of fan favorites leaving their mark on these founding years. Names like Roman Hamrlik, John Tucker, Rob Zaminer, Enrico Ciccone, Chris Gratton, Alexander Selivanov, and Mikhail Anderson. However, in the latter part of the decade, the Lightning could not escape the financial and competitive hurdles that plagued most expansion teams at the time. But they'd soon rebound, paving the path to a brighter future through John Cullen and his inspirational comeback from cancer, a new ownership group in Palace Sports, and anchoring future glory in the form of an 18-year-old #1 draft pick, and the signing of an undersized, undrafted free agent.
And now, to help wind the clock back to the Phil Esposito era of the franchise, please welcome longtime television host of Lightning Hockey, the one and only Mr. Paul Kennedy.
Wow. This is incredible. Isn't this a great theater? Such a privilege to be here. Happy anniversary. It's amazing. 30 years going by in the blink of an eye in the speed of a Steven Stamkos slap shot. And here we are. Let's hear by applause. Who was there at Expo Hall when this all... And then we moved to the Thunderdome. Who was there? Largest crowd to this day the NHL has ever seen indoors. And then just across the street, when Brian Bradley scored the first goal in the Ice Palace, which is now Amalie Arena, the home of 3 Stanley Cup champions. Who was there that night? We've been there. Tonight we celebrate 3 decades of history and do so with all-stars, Hall of Famers, the greats. And I think you share with me a profound love of the men that played this game, of this franchise, and of this city. It is so special. Whether you played 1 game for Tampa Bay or like Vinny and soon Steven Stamkos, you played 1,000. It matters to us that you wore the bolt on your sweater. We are going to, tonight, welcome 6 men to get this off. We'll celebrate 3 eras here. But these are wonderful individuals. And for me, having been a part of this with now Bally Sports, Sunshine Network back in the day, the first team is always the dearest to my heart. All the stories that we're going to hear tonight and have a lot of fun if we can get them talking. And let's introduce them now to you if we can. Leading it off, the goaltender who won the first game on the road in Lightning history. He came here from St. Louis and would have a 10-year career. War number 35. Would you welcome Pat Jablonski, the Jabber. Where is Patty? Patty! Where are they having you sit, Pat? Yeah? Wonderful to see you. There's a great connection with the Buffalo Sabres in this organization, as you know, through the years. So many of our players at one time or the other played for Scotty Bowman and the Sabres. Scotty comes to almost every game. Scotty Bowman drafted this next man, and when he came here, it meant something to him. He played on excellent Sabre teams, would take his skills around the world playing in Europe, but while he was here, he went from the expansion year to the playoffs. What a tough centerman he was. Number 14, John Tucker. Good evening, John. Grab a seat. 2 17-goal seasons right there for Tampa Bay. He had already been in the NHL for 8 years playing in the Norris division. The Norris division, of course, allowed you to wear brass knuckles. That's how tough it was. He had been a great player in Detroit, 2 30-goal seasons. He came here and was the first man to put the C on his sweater as captain, very first. Would you welcome Paul Yserbart? Hello, Paul. Absolutely. He was bigger than life, literally, figuratively, or at least very big for a goaltender of that time. Back in the 90s, he stood 6'4". You add skates to him, he was Vazzy's size in that era. He had been an all-star in Buffalo, came here from Toronto, and really changed things on the back end. He wore number 93 because that's the year he showed up. Please welcome Darren Poopa. Hey, buddy. Oops. And our very first All-Star. And now you hear him in the background. In 1992, when they played the All-Star game, he played with Gretzky and Hall in Montreal. He was a 42-goal scorer, had a wonderful career, the original number 19, still with the franchise to this day, Brian Bradley. Hello, Brian. Grab a seat. And now, one of the greatest figures in sporting history across North America over the past 60 years. The first man with 100 points in a season, 717 goals. He was in the Hall of Fame before he ever had a dream to do the impossible, to show the National Hockey League that you could have a franchise in the Sunshine State, and then he made it happen. The Miracle Man, our founding father. Show your thunder for Phil Esposito. Welcome. Phil, only appropriate that we begin with you here. Happy anniversary, year 30. What does an evening like that in this theater with these men mean to Phil?
Well, it means a lot, except that when that smoke was over there, I couldn't see where the hell I was going. You could have let down in the smoke there, boys. Look. I remember yesterday, December the 6th, back in 1990, I was at the Breakers Hotel, and the night before, Jimmy Rutherford, who was running things for Carmanos, remember, guys? Came into my room and wanted to go in with us together to get the franchise here, because they had also applied for a franchise in Tampa Bay. And before it was all over, we basically threw them out. Because, I mean, they wanted us to put up money and they were going to take over, and it just didn't work. But anyway, we got the franchise the next day, and when I came back here, I remember landing, and a fellow named Jimmy Cusack was waiting at the airport with a bunch of people, and I was like, didn't know whether we could do it or not, and we went to 501 East Kennedy Boulevard, and that's where our offices were, and there was probably 800 people. I'm thinking, oh yeah, this will be a good spot. I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong. And it turned out to be a fabulous spot, and the Crescent is Jeff Vinnick. He brought this franchise. He brought this franchise to where I really believed it could be. And I just recently had breakfast with him, and I said to him, thank you, Jeff. I mean, you made my dream come true about a franchise and starting a franchise. Who the hell ever thought a kid from Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, Canada would do this? And one thing I remember, you gotta hire good people around you. If you don't, you're in deep doo-doo.
One of the people you did hire cannot be with us, but he joins us via video. Watch this.
Hey, Bolts fans. Well, I sure am sorry that I can't be with you all tonight.
Crispy.
But I do know you're going to hear some great stories from some wonderful people. Those early years are unforgettable ones. I don't know how many truths they're going to be telling you, but I do know everyone is going to have some hilarious laughs and memories. Hey, have a super fun evening. I look forward to seeing you all soon. Stay safe. Crispy.
Terry Crisp. Brian, what was it like playing for Terry Crisp. You had been with established original 6 franchises, and you come here to the Bay, and Crispy's your first head coach. Were you with him at all in Calgary before that?
I was with Crispy, and I had him in Calgary, and then I had him in the minors in Moncton. So he was fiery. I mean, I could tell you stories about him and Brett Hall over and over. Oh my God!
Well, we have time.
Yeah, we have time. Oh, he did not like Brett Hall.
But he was with you in the All-Star game. We just puffed you up.
I know. Well, you might not have liked Gretzky either. But but you know what, Crispy, you know what, you had to play hard, you had to work hard, and that's the thing about Crispy. He was a type of coach where if you give an honest effort, he'd play you. And at the end of the day, that's what he was like. He won a Stanley Cup with Calgary in '89. So I knew coming here, you just had to work hard. Didn't matter what your talent level was, and you'd get an opportunity. So I mean, we had some, the first years where it was interesting. I mean, you know what, opening night was something that I'll never forget. And like, I couldn't agree more with Phil. I mean, bringing the Lightning to Tampa and the Bay Area. I mean, I really believe, like Phil said, if it wasn't for Jeff Vinik in 2010, we might not be sitting here today. I mean, he was instrumental. I mean, the team was in a lot of turmoil, and Jeff came in and did an amazing job, probably the best owner in any sports. Well, we're blessed.
I just want to say this. You're right. Without Jeff, this all wouldn't happen. But I can tell you this. This team was not going to leave here. Because before Jeff bought it, we had put a group together, and we had gotten to 85 million. We needed 106. Yeah. And I remember calling, what's his name? The boss. Bettman. How can I forget that?
He is the commissioner of the National Hockey League, Gary Bettman.
But I remember calling him and saying, listen, I hear rumors that Jerry Bruckenheimer is involved with these guys and they want to move it to Vegas. We're not letting it move. We'll raise the money. We're staying. He says, Phil, don't worry. I got the perfect guy. And when he said that to me, I said, who? He said, I can't tell you yet, but trust me. I said, okay, Gary, we're good. And it was Jeff. What a blessing.
When we return, more with the Espo era, when A Night with the Bolts, presented by Advent Health, continues.
Tuck, you were on the ice that first game in Expo Hall. We've seen the celebration, Phil's speeches, and how electric it was. But you were playing Chicago, and Chicago had just won the Campbell Conference the year before and gone to the Stanley Cup final, Belfour's and goal. What was it like with Crispy, with Bradley, with Jabber, when you guys go out there and you're going to play now and pushes come to shove, and not only do you play, but you roll the Blackhawks?
I think before I get to that, Phil said you have to hire good people, and he does it so easily and seamlessly. But Paul's been here 30 years too, and he makes us all. He makes us all look good because
thank you very much.
He asks us questions that we can answer. and he's been doing it for 30 years, so we all appreciate you very much.
So, Tuck, by the way, we broadcast minor league hockey in San Antonio, Texas together back in the 90s after the skating days were over. He was great, but we did that. What was it like to go out on the ice, and what was the look in Chicago? Describe it on the ice, the look in the faces. That was Darryl Sutter's debut as a head coach in the NHL.
But
Chicago.
Before we get to that, we should talk... We should talk about why I was doing broadcast with you in San Antonio, because Phil had gassed me.
All good things must come to an end.
It might have been Crispy.
I don't think it mattered who we played that night. We were all a misfit bunch of guys that no one in any other organization really wanted, had given up on us. So we kind of found a brotherhood coming here together, and that dressing room was ready to play. It wouldn't have mattered who was there. And I think that's the bedrock of the organization started that way, where Phil made it an environment to come here, and right from training camp, just to have fun and play as a group and a team and help build what it is today. So it's kind of a good feeling to sit up here. And
Yeah.
I was talking with my wife on the way down here. The changes that we've seen in the 30 years that we've been here, it's remarkable to see the organization come to the point it's at, and it's great to be a part of it.
That's well put.
Yeah, I got a couple Tuck stories here. We played, true story, most shots in a single game. PK?
Number 14
How
had
many did he have?
14 on goal, still a record for the
14
Tampa Bay
shots
Lightning.
on goal. John Tucker right here. Against San Jose, I think he had 2 goals. 2 goals, Tuck?
I spent most of my Tampa career passing to Brian.
Okay.
Did the puck come back?
This
Did
has
the puck
bothered
come
him
back?
since 1992.
So John had 14 shots in goal against San Jose, and then another time, true story, we're playing in Ottawa at the Civic Center. The second year, me and John have a 2-on-0 from the far blue line. We're passing the puck down the ice back and forth like this is going to be a goal. We passed it all the way down the ice right behind the goalie, and we all looked at each other. We didn't even get a shot on goal. And we got to the bench, and Crispy's looking at us like, what are you two doing? I don't know. I thought Tuck was going to score. He didn't score. I didn't score. We were laughing so hard on the bench. Right, Tuck?
Paul, you had been in the original 6, had 2 30-goal seasons. What was the perspective of the established NHL toward this expansion brigade that was down here in Tampa? Talk about your pedigree. When you were playing, tell where your locker was in Detroit, who you were lockering against, and you come out of that established look playing these guys here.
Yeah, the first, so my real kick in the NHL was with Detroit, and Yzerman sat here in our locker room, home locker room, and Gallant sat here. We kind of did the same thing on the road, and we're going to play Tampa, and everybody's going, frick, where are we going out tonight? Type of thing, right? We're going to the state fairgrounds. We're bending our sticks, heating the sticks up back when you use wooden sticks, and throwing it in the snowbank where the Zamboni dumped it, or we're putting it in the fish pond behind it, right? And I see this guy, our dressing room is really small there, and then I see somebody else, he's throwing a line in, and that's Roman Hammerlick. He's fishing before the game. But we knew, we had a really solid team in Detroit, so we knew when we came to Tampa it was, you got to get the win, or else your name's mud back in Detroit, being an original 6 team. But as it progressed, this team became, and when I got traded here, the first thing I think Tuck said to me, and I'm sure Tony, God bless him, Tony said to me, he says, do you like golf and like wearing flip-flops to the practices? I said, I can deal with that. And I go, so where's all the press during the practices and stuff? And do they know you when you go out to have dinner? And they're going, no. You just go to the games. Everybody else is doing other stuff around here. I said, we'll fit in pretty good. But when we went to the Thunderdome, that's when I was traded, when we went to the Thunderdome, I could see that Phil had put a group of guys, a lot of players went in and out a lot of time, but that year that we made the playoffs against Philadelphia, it was a great group of guys that really believed in each other, and that's what you have to do in sports, That locker room is sacred, and if you pull together as one, we took Philly to the 6th game. If Darren, I'm telling you, if that guy didn't get hurt, sorry, Jabber, you were gone by then. If that guy didn't get hurt, I think we would have won that 7-game series against Philadelphia, and they were ranked top
Bobby
3 in
Clark
the league.
told me that.
Did he really?
He absolutely admitted it to me.
Yeah.
He says, man, you guys outplayed us, and if Poopa didn't get hurt, I don't think we could have beaten you.
Yep. And who was the backup?
I think Tony was the backup.
Jeff Reese.
No,
Tony
Jeff
was going to
Reese.
be a backup
Jeff
if
Reese
Reese
was,
went down.
Nothing against Reese are out there, but
how
we
many
need poops.
How many IV bags did he have going on in the dressing room? He was dehydrated. We're like, he's not going to make the game here.
We had to give him intravenous between the period.
Right.
In that first year, the Lightning beat 5 of the 6 teams that were the original 6, and the other, Toronto, they got a point against them in a tie. They did very well against the original 6, really did. And Jabber won the first road game in Lightning history, and we were flying commercial. Remember that? There were no
We were
charters.
lucky we even had money to fly commercial.
What does that mean, commercial, for the guys today?
The guys don't know.
They don't know.
Right? You're up
We were
there.
the last team to ever charter.
Gladys from Chicago was sitting next to you. She's 65 years old, asking, "Do you play hockey?" But
and I'm in the middle seat.
what would you say, Jabber? And Jabber, what would you say? You get on first, and what would happen?
Yeah, so the airlines would let us board first because we boarded as a big group. Well, we all had big suit bags because we traveled. We take all of our suits. Well, we'd get in first. We'd put all of our stuff up above, and then all the 150 other people that came on, there was nowhere for them to put their bags. So I don't think they cared too much for us when we were traveling.
Lightning logo. Like we go into St. Louis, Kiel Center, great players. Hull is still there, and you win, and you almost had a shutout. That was the first road win in franchise history. Jabber stood on his head, and they scored. Was it Janney scores from Hull with about 18 seconds to go, and there goes the shutout.
Yeah, 18 seconds. And I heard that, Phil, that you were pissed about that. Like, that was yeah. I mean, the win was the most important thing, right? But I came from St. Louis, so I wanted nothing more than to shut them out and show that they were wrong. And, it was 18 seconds. It was almost. But we won the game, and I think that's the most important thing, obviously.
It was, but I was pissed off they let that score on you.
Yeah.
Darren, the year before he came here, had a win for Toronto against Tampa Bay. Remember that Maple Leaf Gardens? I think Tuck scored in that game on you. But when you came here, and he reminds you of that on the golf course. When you came here, the whole poopa began. What was it like being embraced as you were here in Tampa?
It still goes on today. But it was great, the fans were behind us, and they took a good heart to me, and I really appreciate it, and they got behind us, and they got behind me, and I think in 1996 in Hillsborough County, the number one pet name in Hillsborough County was Poopa. And that's a true story.
I know it is.
Speak to, if you would, guys, the pride that outside the beautiful palm trees and the sunshine, it meant something to put on that logo and play. When it was time to play, throughout the years we saw from 92 till now, you guys brought it, I think.
Yeah,
True?
no, I totally, and I've seen it from the guys who were here at the beginning, like Tuck and Brad's. No different than any other jersey, but you're in a place where there should not be hockey. Thanks to Phil, there was. And I'm going, it's the same room, same dressing room, the same pride as playing in any other NHL team, a rink. And these guys brought it. And I want to say one thing about Poop. So I was traded from Chicago, trade deadline, and it took me 3 weeks to score on him in practice. I go, who is this guy?
Yeah, and like I said, with Izzy and, Poop's talking Jabber and, even Phil, like to this day, I mean, I look at, I've been around the organization for 30 years, and you know what, everybody always asks me the one question. I mean, you put the logo on, you go play your hard as you can, whether the team's good, bad, or indifferent. But to me, Phil, and the organization for 30 years, to me, the most impressive thing that I can really think of is winning the Stanley Cup 3 times in 30 years. To me, that's unbelievable. There's some teams that, I mean, obviously we won 2004, and they're going to be coming up with Anderchuk and all the guys with, Tim Taylor and Vinny and all the guys who will be coming up here in a bit. But then the last 2 with the recent guys. But there's teams haven't never won a Stanley Cup, and team I don't like the most, Toronto, hasn't won a cup since '67, and I was 2 years old. I love it. Yeah, right, Phil? You couldn't have liked Toronto. You couldn't have liked Toronto.
The only thing I'm really upset about is they look like us with the uniforms.
In the short time that we have remaining, because there's a great program to come, we have close to 20 other players coming on. Real quick, proudest moment, Tuck. We'll run right down through here. John, give me your proudest moment, Tuck,
Circle back to me on that one.
All right. Give it to me.
Proudest moment in a Lightning uniform, being a big part of getting to that first playoff.
I'll save you for last. Brian, you did have the first goal in what is now Amalie Arena.
Yeah, I mean,
the
that's
All-Star
for sure.
game?
Yeah, you know what? I think that the two, no questions, the first game we played in '92, when we beat Chicago, and then to represent Tampa Bay and have the logo and represent not only the team but the city in the first All-Star game was unbelievable.
Paul, from your perspective, what would it be?
Yeah, it has to be the first playoff game. I mean, that series to me, it was a tough series. And we had some tough guys on that team. And everybody pulled the rope. And it was impressive. I mean, and that hopefully that set the foundation of things to come. And I think it did.
Jabber? Very well put.
Yeah, so a couple. I think the first game that we played at home against Chicago, beating a very good Chicago team soundly. My first win in St. Louis, that was a little payback for them letting me go, which I'm glad they did because I love it here. And I think my first shutout. And Brian Bradley scored the only goal in that game against Ottawa. So
I had to do it for you, Jack.
I know.
Finally, Phil, you made the decision. You drafted the team. You selected each of these players. You acquired them. They are here now and all living in Tampa because you brought them here.
That is really special to me that a lot of players have stayed here. It wasn't easy to get guys to try to come down here. And you were talking about hockey in Florida, you said a little while ago. That was one of the biggest things when I went up north and be interviewed. They'd say, how could you play hockey in Florida? And I'd look at them and say, dum-dum, we play indoors.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Good answer.
Our program continues, but would you show your thunder for these gentlemen, the original Tampa Bay?
As the new millennia dawned, the Lightning quickly went to work, assembling the core of what would become one of the most driven teams in the NHL. Helming it all was the architect, resourceful general manager, Jay Feaster. And behind the bench, an untested NHL head coach named John Tortorella. With Vinny Lecavalier and Martin St. Louis anchoring the on-ice improvement, a new core would emerge to contribute to the turnaround. Great players like Brad Richards, Pavel Kubina, and Ben Clymer. Savvy trades would usher in even more stars to Tampa Bay, such as Frederick Modin, Nikolai Habibulin, Ruslan Fedotenko, Corey Stillman, and Dan Boyle. But they were young and still in need of an experienced leader. As fate would have it, they would find one in their new captain, a 20-year veteran, still yearning to add his name to the Stanley Cup. Together, this group would transform Tampa Bay into Hockey Bay, USA, making 4 straight playoff appearances, including their memorable first playoff series win in 2003, and their magical run in 2004, dispatching the Islanders in 5, sweeping the Canadiens in 4, battling the Flyers in 7 to capture their first conference title.
The Lightning will play for the Stanley Cup!
And distinguishing the Calgary Flames in 7 games in the Stanley Cup Final. Thanks to a series-saving double overtime gem from number 26 in Game 6.
They made rebound. Score! Score! It's Marty St. Louis, baby! Marty's done it again!
And a pair of daggers from Feds on home ice in the deciding Game 7.
Fedotenko shot! Score! Score! Fedotenko!
To capture the ultimate goal.
The Lightning has won the Stanley Cup!
Unfortunately, the Bolts would not be able to parlay their first title into a repeat, with NHL labor issues delaying next season for 16 months. The parts and pieces that made this Lightning era great would erode, one by one. In 2008, a new ownership group would attempt to remake the franchise, and it's an ill-fated experiment. But from the ashes, a silver lining would emerge in the form of a sniping 18-year-old #1 draft pick from Markham, Ontario in 2008. A first-round selection of a strapping Swedish defenseman in 2009. And the arrival of a new owner who would change the face of Tampa Bay sports and our city by the bay for generations to come.
And now, to turn back time to the Hockey Bay era of the Lightning, please welcome television voice of the Lightning for 24 seasons and Hockey Hall of Famer, Mr. Rick Peckham.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be with you tonight to celebrate a franchise that really has a fantastic story to tell, as you've heard already. I'm excited to host the second part of this story with some of the key players and personalities who built on the foundation established by our previous guests. So let's welcome them back. He played 6 seasons in Lightning colors, racking up 127 goals and 371 points, a member of 3 Bolts playoff teams. Please welcome fan favorite, Vinny Prospal. He played 5 seasons at center for the Lightning, an assistant captain and later captain. He was a member of all 4 playoff teams in the decade. A strong locker room presence, he told the boys, "We walk together forever." Please welcome Tim Taylor. A popular player in his 4 seasons in Tampa Bay, all 4 of which were playoff bound. But it's his 2 shots, fired on June 7, 2004, that won it all, which will live in our memories forever. Please welcome Ruslan Fedotenko. He played 6 seasons, scoring 145 goals, 286 points on the end of his laser shot. A member of 3 Lightning playoff teams, including the 2004 championship run where he scored 8 goals. Please welcome Freddie Modine. He became the era's face of the franchise, a #1 overall draft pick and captain who played 13 seasons, racking up 383 goals and the most games in team history, 1,037. He made 5 playoff appearances, including the 2004 date with Destiny. His number 4 is immortalized in the arena rafters. Please welcome Vinny Lecavalier. He brought his 20 years of NHL experience to the Lightning and taught a young team how to win the right way. Captaining 3 of Tampa Bay's playoff teams, including the 2004 title team, the first Bolt ever to hoist a Stanley Cup, and the first Bolt player to be inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame, the one and only Steve Andreychuk.
I'm the only guy out here that brought another drink. Are you guys okay with that?
You could never accuse Dave Andrechuk of not being prepared for any situation. In fact, Dave, I got to ask you, because I really haven't had the pleasure of seeing a lot of these guys in quite a while. When's the last time you've all been together?
I think it was the 10th anniversary, right? Or 15th anniversary. They had a little celebration for us. That's probably the last time. There's a few that come in and out, of course. You know, they all want to live in Florida. They're all going to eventually live in Florida, so we'll see them a bunch.
Well, there's another member of great teams from this decade, and of course the championship team from 2004, who could not be here, but he has sent a message, and let's welcome him in.
Hey Lightning fans, this is Nikolai. How you doing? Congratulations to the Lightning on 30 years in the league. It was awesome winning a Stanley Cup with you guys. Sorry I couldn't make it there, but hope everyone has a great night out there.
That is awesome. Hey, you know, he lives like 16 hours from Moscow.
Really?
Somewhere out in the Siberia or whatever he is.
And that's the suburbs, right?
That's the suburbs,
okay.
Yes.
Well, let's start early in this decade, and you go back to who was on the team back then, and certainly Vinny, first pick in the draft in 1998, so we're talking about the next decade. And Freddie Modine was a part of that group as well. And I look at the 1999-2000 season. That was a rough time in the history of this team. 52 players skated on that team. And it didn't end well as far as the standings. But as far as Vinny being a young guy, and Freddie, you had a little bit of experience at coming into that team, what was the feeling in terms of, is there a light at the end of the tunnel with this group?
Yeah, so I got traded from Toronto. Toronto was my first team. Spent 3 years in Toronto. Got traded down here to Tampa. And Tampa had, I mean, it just went through, I think, an ownership change, a bunch of new players. And I think, if I remember correctly, those owners had the AHL team, Detroit Vipers, and had a couple of championships with that team in the AHL under the belt as they kind of moved down here and brought a bunch of those coaches, players, management with them, trying to figure out, I think, how to run the NHL organization. With that, as you said, came a bunch of new players, testing I mean, I can't remember Vinny, but I mean, the amount of players we went through that my first year.
A lot.
It was a lot.
I think it was a record for defensemen that year.
Yeah,
22 or
28 defensemen or something.
But I mean, just one thing that comes to mind was goalies. I don't know how many goalies we went through. The poor goalies didn't. I mean, and
they had no chance.
No, they had no chance. No. I think it was the second year that Torts came in as an assistant coach. Again, I think that Rick Dudley, who was a GM at the time, brought some great players, but again, a lot of players went through that year, basically testing their feet in the NHL, and a lot of fun at times, but frustrating at times too.
No, just you're talking about Torts coming in, but I don't think he said much that year. I think he was just observing.
No, as an assistant. No. But
yeah, he didn't say anything.
That's funny, but
he was just looking.
Yeah, I mean, he came in and I mean, we all know Torts, and he doesn't like to be quiet, right? But he was biting his tongue that first year as an assistant coach with his group. But every now and then you caught the eye of Torts as an assistant coach now on the ice during practices, and sometimes it felt like we were, just making stuff up as we were going along, and you kind of caught in the corner of your eye, you caught Torts, you caught his eyes, and it's a little bit of an eye roll going on, and he could not believe what was going on at times.
More with Vinny Lecavalier, Dave Andrechuk, and the Hockey Bay era when A Night with the Bolts, presented by Advent Health, continues.
It was an interesting time. I remember Chief and I would get ready for games. The team wasn't winning. In fact, it was a 4-year stretch where they were last or second last every year, and we'd just get excited because there was a new player to talk about. And brings to mind, how many line mates did you have that first couple of years there, Vinny? It must have been a lot.
It was a lot of changes, and like Mo came, he was we were talking about before, he was 28 years old, and like I feel everybody was like between 19 and 23, like a really young and
very young
back,
team. Yes.
And back in the days, I feel that all the players in the league were between probably 25 and 35. So we were extremely young, unexperienced, and it wasn't easy for sure.
But the building started because right after that, Vinny Prospel comes on, and he's, you're getting your feet wet with Ottawa and having a good year there and gaining some traction and coming on, and now Marty's coming in, and Marty is becoming Marty, and some of the other guys come in along the way. And we'll get to you, Andy, and Tails. But you start to see some talent develop there.
Well, I got a quick story. I came as a replacement, not the replacement, but just like Vinny was supposed to hold out, right? You were at the end of the contract.
Oh, no. He held out.
Oh, he held out.
He held out.
They wouldn't sign me.
And I think the assistant GM was Jay Feaster already, and he knew me from Hershey. And I guess they were looking for a center iceman just in case it would take a long time for Vinny to get his money, He
got it.
So I came in.
I need a drink here.
I came in, we started the training camp. Obviously, we went, 6 times 3 laps, 3 times 15 laps. We never touched the puck the first 2 days. And I'm saying, like, oh my God, this is going to be something, but at least I'll play. Vinny's not here. And sure enough, 2 days before the training camp's over, Vinny signs, and I'm on the 4th line.
So with Vinny Prospel in the picture, augmenting Vinny Lecavalier. Now, Brad Richards did not start when you did. He came on the 2000 season. 2000. And so Marty was starting to tell Steve Ludzik, hey, you got to play me. And he started to play him. And then we get to midway through 2000, 2001. Coaching change. Torts is now the head coach. And in that ensuing off season, there's a push to bring some veteran leadership in. So Dave Andrechuk, 20 years in the league, comes in from Buffalo. Tim Taylor played 7 years in the NHL and 5 in the American League to that point. Grant Ledger came on board. What was explained to you guys in terms of your role and just how this was all going to work?
Well, for me, it was, I went back to Buffalo.
To retire.
Yeah, basically. I came down here to golf, go to the beach. It was that, I was figuring that would be the best scenario. But no, I look back on that now, and I went back in 99, 2000 season. I went back to Buffalo for my second stint. I had 20 goals. I was playing on the 4th line, and I was like, okay, I need to go somewhere else. Tampa comes along, and then I started thinking, well, who's there? They're a very bad hockey team. Okay, they got Vinny Lecavalier, they got Richards, they got St. Louis, they got, Happy Boulin in net. They had a bunch.
Throw him a little bone. Freddie was
there. Freddie was there.
I think I was there at the time. I mean, I don't know.
They had a bunch of good young players, and I decided that I was, going to come down here and see how it went. And I was coming to Florida, so what the hell, just go for it. And then I realized that, holy shit, these guys are good. Like these are good young players. And I realized that right away, and I wanted to be part of it. I really did. I wanted to be part of it. I wanted to be part of get us from like we're the dump of the league to, to getting us to like we were a legit team. And we were more than legit after that.
Absolutely. In 2 years, you go from second last in the league to winning the Southeast Division in 2002 and 3. And along the way, the start of that 2002 and 3 season, Jay Feaster making a number of shrewd maneuvers to help build this team. Ruslan Fedotenko comes on board, along with Brad Lukowich. And so you had a core growing. I always find it interesting to look back at great teams and see how they were assembled and the pieces and how they fit together. Feds, in terms of, you're coming in there, and Corey Stillman came in the year of the Cup, so we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but as this group was just coming together, Brad Richards now, he'd been Rookie of the Year, and, he was getting established. Where did you see your role in how you fit in as opposed to where you were coming from with the Flyers? And of course, as we know from the 04 playoffs, they were a very, very tough opponent at that point.
It was an interesting story. I was got traded during the draft to Tampa, and I thought it was a prank. I thought it was Chris Therien. He's a big prankster, and he saw me in Philly because I was doing some with my paperwork, and I thought he saw me there, and he called and making a joke. So say, hey, I'm Bobby Clark. He was a general manager. I just traded you to Tampa Bay Lightning. And thank you, and kind of good luck. And so I hang up, and my wife looked at me. It's like, who's that? I was like, I think it's Chris Therien telling me I got traded. Call my agent. My agent picked up. I was like, no, I didn't hear anything. I'll call you back. Okay. So I thought, at that point, I thought for sure it's a prank. But anyway, I ended up got traded here. And then I remember my wife was asking me, do you like the place? Do you like anything about Tampa at that time? And it was my, second year in the league. So I was still pretty young, don't speak much English, don't understand much geography in the United States. I was like, the things I remember the most, there was a lot of Flyers jerseys when we were playing there in the stands. It was a lot of snowbirds coming down there. I was like, so that was kind of my memories when I was playing here. Playing with Philly, coming down to Tampa. But for me, I was, again, young, not knowing how many players, what kind of good players are here. I was coming in as just, all right, another opportunity. Let's go and try and see where we can do there. And again, knowing going to the team where it didn't have as much depth, like at the time for the Flyers, I will have opportunity to play more. So I was looking forward to come here.
And you think about it, Jay makes that deal where he trades his first round draft pick and he gets Ruslan. And he trades, I think, more than the first rounder to get him. And at that point, I think he understands that we're very close. We don't need a pick. We need an actual player. We need a good player that can play in a top six.
Established player.
Established player, and I mean, you were still young at the time, obviously, but...
I'm still young.
And he's selling those pills after for $5.99 out at the front desk.
More with Rick Peckham and the 2004 Stanley Cup champion Lightning when A Night with the Bolts, presented by Advent Health, continues.
Jay was very smart. Just before you say it, he felt this team was growing, as you said, that he needed established players to hop right in the lineup, to play with our better players. And Feds had already played in the league for 1.5 years there.
2 years, yeah.
And he was an established player that we saw as a top six guy that could play with Vinny, that could play with Marty, could play with Richie. So Jay was smart enough to realize that my destiny is going to depend on what I do now and how this team does. And to make that, and he did it with a couple players he brought in our roster. With Andre Waugh was one of the guys.
Early on, he comes in. You know, if you're Jay Feaster, you can't see, well, we're going to be playing for the Cup in 2 years. You don't know that, right? Where the Daryl Sador deal, you know, hey, we're on the verge. This can be the piece that puts us over the top. But Fed's, at that point, he's seeing you where you're fitting in, and it's a bit of a gamble.
I believe so. Also, it was Bill Barber who was joining the team, and he was my coach in the minors, and then in the Flyers first year, I believe he was also.
He was our player personnel at the time.
He helped to bring me here or identify, say, I have some potentials.
So we've got the team together. We haven't mentioned Dan Boyle, a very important piece. I look back at these names, and like this power play just must have been ridiculous because of all the skill that you guys had. But let's fast forward to the Cup run. And you get through the regular season. You had gone 2 rounds in 2003, upset the Capitals. It was an upset by the fact that you had jumped so high in the standings to win the Southeast Division. But then the next year, you know, this assemblage of talent is there. You're on the verge of going deep in the playoffs. And when I look back at those playoffs, particularly the last 2 rounds, I was shocked at how ferocious they were. You know, where you had gone 2 rounds before, and that was tough going, the playoffs. But, you know, the 3rd round with Philly, it goes the distance. The final round against the Flames, I mean, that was just ferocity that I'd never seen where you're really watching a team closely. You guys lived it. Was that eye-opening at all for you?
Yeah, I think, first of all, that year, I think in December, we were 8th or 9th, like, and like we weren't doing that great beginning of the year until December, and I think we won starting in January or around, you know, beginning of January, 17 out of 20 games, and I think that's really when we started to believe how good we can be. But yeah, as soon as, you know, with first 2 rounds, and we're you know, obviously playing some good teams, but not the Flyers, right? You get to the Flyers, you're like, oh boy, you know, these guys have been good for a long time, established, and we're just a young team. But I think we really believed in what we could do, you know, for sure in those playoffs as we were winning rounds, you know.
I always think of Feds getting hit into the boards. Was it Robin Regeer in the finals? Yep. I mean, how did you come back from that? There were just hits like that. Kubi was taking them. Right. And
I still don't remember, so.
It's a good thing.
So I will tell you this story is that, so in game, you know, he gets hit in the boards, gets crushed against the boards. His face is like crushed against the boards, and he's lying on the medical table. And I come in after the game, and I said to him, hey, how you doing? He starts speaking Ukrainian to me. And I guess he thinks I'm his dad or something. And the dude...
Oh, he's not that far off.
Fair enough, fair enough. And this man then scores 2 goals in Game 7. Unreal.
It was a quick story. When I got hit, it was a little funny. But not funny when I got hit, but afterwards when I remember Habib Bulin coming in the locker room between the periods and was asking how's it going, and doctor was, Tommy was a medical trainer, asked me, do you know where you at? Do you know what year it is? And I said, yes. What year? It's 2002. And they said, which team? I said, Philadelphia Flyers. And they said, no, you are in Tampa Bay Lightning and you playing for Stanley Cup final. And I laughed and I said, yeah, Tampa never make playoffs. And Habib Bulin said, beep, I can't say what he said, is like, and he went back to play in the 3rd period. So it was not a good prognosis at that moment, but
Rick,
all good.
Rick, that series was the toughest series I have ever been involved in. I think all of us have ever been involved in. They hit to hurt. They hit to put us through the boards. And it was game 3 where the whole series changed when Vinny LeCavier challenged Jarome Iginla. And not because he's up here right now. He was one of, obviously, a elite player. But when your elite player stands up and says, "F you," we ended up losing that game, but we won the Stanley Cup because of one of that moment. That was a changing moment in the series.
Vinny, what do you remember about the moments leading up to all of that?
You mean like that shift, or?
Yes.
I kind of knew it was coming, to tell you the truth. It was
Really?
kind of like building up behind the net, and yeah, it's not like I never fought before, but obviously in playoffs, I think guys fight a little bit less, and I don't know, it just happened. It's hard for me to describe, but he's a pretty tough guy, so I'm not gonna lie. As soon as it started, I'm like, I can't wait for this thing to be over with. So, like I'll do my best here, but it's.
And the irony of fighting in hockey is, Jarome Iginla's not here, but you two are two of the nicest people that I think any of us would ever meet in the world of hockey. And here you are battling in the Stanley Cup Finals, dropping the gloves and going at it. But that's what was.
We had
insane.
a Team Canada training camp about 2 months later, and of course my roommate's Jarome Iginla.
Somebody had a sense of humor.
Yeah, it was so awkward. It wasn't good. He is a very nice guy.
All right, Tails, we walk together forever. When was that said? What was the inspiration on that?
You know what? That saying's been over and over in the hockey world. It's the guys you win with, you do forever. That forever bond, and it's life changing. It really is. That 2004 Stanley Cup championship for all of us changed our lives forever. I remember my teammates when I played in different eras, but these guys now are lifelong friends and brothers, really. And we have this bond that I can't explain, but it's a true bond. And I was lucky enough to play in a 97 Stanley Cup with Detroit and win a cup with them. And I can't explain the bond I have with these players. You haven't seen them in years. I come in Monday and watching a game Tuesday, and it's just it's something that I will cherish forever, and it's lifelong memories, and it's something that I dreamed of, and you guys made it happen.
Certainly a moment we'll all remember in following this team, the 2004 Stanley Cup championship team. But to go later in the decade, we're starting a new era. Steven Stamkos is drafted first overall in 2008. Victor Hedman is drafted number 2 overall in 2009. And who's the guy who bridges the gap from, let's go back to the previous group. He was part of the 90s, Vinny LeCavalier, from 98 through those years. And as we wrap up this segment, this second decade of the history of the team, Vinny, what was it like? I look back and I see the roster, you, Marty, Stamkos, Hedman. I'm like, holy smokes. I mean, people will look back years from now and see the talent, the Hall of Fame talent that was together with that group. Just in helping those guys get their feet wet in the league. What was that like?
It was great because they're great people. Like I always, when we talk about Stammer and Hetty, they're just, they were eager to learn. They were very respectful to the veteran guys. Like they weren't coming in thinking they were somebody else. They really want to learn, like just good people. So for me to be a part of Stammer and Hetty's beginning, I think it was pretty amazing. I remember just telling Hetty all the time, I'm like, you're such a horse, like you're going to be so good. I could see it, but at 18, you're young. You're making, you could be making mistakes, and you can see the potential. But they're so young. Like Stammer scored 25 goals, I think, from December to April. So you can obviously see the talent. But they're so young. But for me to be with them and to try to help them as much as we can, the older players. It was great because we knew how the potential that they had.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it has really been a pleasure for me to sit among these guys and talk about those years. So fresh in my memories and yours too. Thank you so much, guys. The next decade of Lightning hockey coming up.
In March of 2010, the cornerstone of the Lightning's future success is cemented as new owner Jeff Vinik pledges to rebuild the franchise, refurbish its home, and renew its community commitment. Anchored by the on-ice play of Steven Stamkos, Victor Hedman, and all-stars Martin St. Louis and Vincent Lecavalier, new general manager Steve Yzerman dug in. And their first season was a magical ride. But despite goalie Dwayne Rollason and a perfect storm carrying the Bolts to within one win of reaching the 2011 Stanley Cup final, this initial success would require a stronger foundation if it was going to sustain. So they set out to build one. After a few down seasons, draft selections began to emerge. Players such as Alex Killorn, Andre Palat, Nikita Kucherov, Cedric Paquette, and Vladislav Nemestikov. Free agents Valtteri Filppula, Anton Stralman, and an undrafted signee in Tyler Johnson would join key trade gains in goalie Ben Bishop, Braden Coburn, and Ryan Callahan, while bidding adieu to their longtime greats. And with Stammer now carrying the mantle of captain, the onus of making it all click fell on a rookie head coach, but one who had won at every prior level. And click they did. After absorbing a round one playoff sweep in 2014, the 15 version responds by posting their first ever 50-win season and storm through the playoffs. And though they'd fall to Chicago in the final, the Bolts were set up for long-term success. The next wave of acquisitions would fortify them further. Seasoned pros like Dan Girardi, and later Ryan McDonough, and young blue liners Mikhail Sergachev and Eric Chernak. Budding young stars would also reach maturity in this window in Yanni Gourde, Anthony Cirelli, and Braden Point. The result, 2 more trips to the conference final follow, and a record-tying 62-win President's Trophy season in 2019. And while celebrating Norris, Hart, Ross, and Vezina awards were special, the ultimate team goal was still beyond their grasp, but not for long. After a quick round one exit in 2019, the Bolts blast back onto the ice with a chip on their shoulder to pick up where they left off. Along with blue-collar additions like Kevin Shattenkirk, Pat Maroon, Blake Coleman, Barclay Goodrow, and Zach Bogosian, the Lightning morphed their style from strike to shutdown. But the world shut down first. Once it began to turn again, the Lightning never waver in their process. And for the next 2 months, isolated from the world, they'd make their run at redemption, exacting revenge against Columbus, caging the Bruins in similar fashion, fighting with the Islanders to win a 3rd conference title, and dispatching Dallas in 6 behind a storybook goal.
Stamkos open. Shoot, score! Stamkos!
Look at the players going crazy for Steven. That is unbelievable.
And a 4th straight series-clinching shutout, culminating in a long overdue celebration.
The Lightning win the Stanley Cup! They've reached the top of the mountain! They are the Stanley Cup champs!
And a homecoming they'd never forget. Largely intact, with the notable add of rookie Ross Colton, the 2021 Bolts reached the postseason, this time with fans in the stands, trading blows with their cross-state rivals in round 1, surging past the Hurricanes in round 2, sinking the Islanders again in 7 games to win the Eastern Conference, and finally dominating the Canadiens in the Cup final, delivering the unexpected to the cathartic, to the improbable, going back-to-back, and enjoying that long-awaited party on home ice.
The Lightning have done it for the second year in a row. Wow. They have won the Stanley Cup.
Never be able to replicate last year's feeling because it was the first, but we never got this.
Another cup, another parade. Why not go for 3? The 2021-22 Bolts would attempt to do just that, something no team had accomplished in nearly 40 years. Coming from behind to take down Toronto in round 1, with a trade deadline move shining in Game 7, frustrating Florida again with a round 2 sweep, and battling back from a 2-0 deficit to beat the Rangers in 6 in the conference final and punch their ticket to a 3rd straight trip to play for the Stanley Cup. But there, bruised and battered, the Lightning would fall to the Avalanche in 6 games, including 2 tough overtime losses. For the first time in 2 years, hockey's holy grail has a new address. But heads won't hang low here for long, as a standard of excellence is perfectly phrased by their captain.
The standard is to do whatever it takes to win. And a lot of the time that's putting the team over yourself, and that doesn't happen overnight. That takes a while to develop and to learn and to appreciate the sacrifices that it takes. And we know when we step on the ice wearing that jersey, that's the expectation, and we know it works.
It's a never-ending mission for this season and every season hence to always move forward, on and off the ice, to always validate the vision set forth years ago when this golden era of Lightning hockey took flight.
And now, to guide us through the Jeff Vinik era of Lightning hockey, please welcome the television voice of the Lightning on Bally Sports Sun, Mr. Dave Randorf.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you very much. So we've already heard some great stories about where this team was born, where it's been, where it's come from, and we're going to wrap it up with the Vinik era, as we like to call it. So without further ado, let's bring out the next round of guests that are going to hit the stage here. This guy, January 1st, 2011, the Lightning made a trade for a goaltender who would ultimately lead them to Game 7 of the conference final against the Boston Bruins. Played 14 years in the league, 2 here in Tampa Bay. Rolly, the goalie, Dwayne Rolliston. This guy was a power forward coveted around the NHL. He brought size, toughness, scoring touch. 11 years in the NHL, but 6 here in Tampa Bay. 3 20-goal seasons. Please say hello to Bugsy, Ryan Malone. Another goaltender to join us here on the stage. This guy was originally drafted by his home province, Montreal Canadiens, but he wrapped up his career here, eventually platooning here with Dwayne Rolliston. He is a guy that is still living and a vibrant and important part of this community as the assistant hockey director in the community relations department, Matthew Garon. Our next player, 11 years in the National Hockey League, a Michigan boy, played 4 years here, again, still lives here, as many of the guys do. He was also a member of that team that went to the 2011 Eastern Conference Final, and now a colleague of mine on the Bally Sports team. Please say hello to Adam Hall. This big guy, 16 years on the blue line in the National Hockey League. Selected 8th overall by the Philadelphia Flyers, was a terror there for years until the Lightning made a big big trade to bring him here to Tampa Bay, where he played for 6 years. He's a Stanley Cup champion, war number 55, Braden Coburn. And Son Blair. Last but certainly not least, 2 current members of your Tampa Bay Lightning. This guy will tell you very quickly that he is the longest tenured current member of the Lightning, having been drafted in 2007, but the Lightning's the only team he's ever played for. He scored in overtime against the Maple Leafs on Saturday night. The killer, Alex Killorn. Yeah, and last, but certainly not least, from Örnsköldsvik, Sweden, Norris Trophy, Conn Smythe, a pillar of this franchise's history, number 77, Victor Hedman. Well, here we are, celebrating 30 years of Lightning hockey. You came here as like a kid. Can you believe? We got to hear what he has to say. Hang on a sec. Can you believe you were just a teenager when you first hit the ice, and now we're celebrating 30 years of all this? Remember, it's flown by, hasn't it?
Sure has. I think I got my driver license the week before I moved here, so very young kid, and yeah, what great ride it's been. Obviously getting a lot older, but you know, this is my home, and yeah, it's been a great ride.
We'll get into a lot of stories with all these guys momentarily, but there was one more guy that was going to be part of this group here. Couldn't make it, but before we get into our conversation up here, a special video message. He got all dressed up for it and everything. Roll it, please, Lucy.
Hey, Bolts fans, Ben Bishop here. Just wanted to say sorry I couldn't be here tonight to celebrate 30 years of Lightning hockey. I wanted to let you know how special my time was in Tampa and how much I appreciated all your support over the years. Some of the best years of my life. Hope you guys have a great night tonight, have some fun, and hopefully see you guys soon. Go Bolts.
He's such a great guy. I mean, you guys all know him way better than I do, but I tell you, whenever I was around, what a great guy, Ryan.
Yeah, solid man. Pretty good goalie, too.
Yeah, not bad.
More on the evolution of the Vinnick era of Lightning hockey when A Night with the Bolts, presented by Advent Health, continues.
So let's kind of go along this chronologically. I introduced Dwayne by saying that this was a team that after the Stanley Cup years, took a while to get back up there, and then you guys got back to the Eastern Conference Final. You came in halfway through that season. Tell us about that process, building that team, how you came in, and ultimately going to that series against the Bruins.
How I came in, I wasn't too sure. It was New Year's Eve, I do believe, when I got the phone call in Calgary. We're in Calgary when I was playing for the Islanders, and Gar Snow called, and so I got traded. 5 minutes later, Steve Eiersman called, said, come into Tampa, get on a plane, and next thing you know, I'm here. And then from there, it was awesome. I got to meet Ryan and Adam at the time, and of course, Victor. And as you all know, lately, the history of the team, the closer to the team, the better success on the ice, and that's sort of what happened with us. I think we just grew as a team together and had a lot of fun together, and it related to the ice.
Yeah, especially for you, for a goaltender coming into a new group, it's probably difficult. And you guys, you know, obviously his reputation preceded him, Ryan, so you knew what you were getting. But still, you've got to come together to have that success once the playoffs starts, correct?
100%. We also knew Rolly's good at stopping, 40-plus shots on a good night. So we got to keep him loose back there, make sure he's getting plenty of rubber. So it was great. And like you said, our team was very close on and off the ice, and I think that carried over. And I think the Penn series we were down 3-1, ended up battling back. So, a lot of heart in that group, and it was definitely a fun ride.
What do you remember, Adam?
It was funny. We were reminiscing a little bit just backstage, and specifically to Rolly. I remember, early in that Pittsburgh series where, we were a team that kind of the last couple seasons before that, had some volatility, and then you come into this season, and really we had a good season. Rolly was a big part of that coming in, and we had so much confidence in him. But you really saw his veteran leadership and presence. We came in, I think, one of the games early in that series and had a great first period. I think we were up early, and it was really just all this adrenaline. You come in off the ice, first intermission, and guys are just yelling, and it was just pandemonium in the locker room, and you just hear this kind of whistle, and you look over, everybody stops and looks over at Rolly. He's like, calm down. And then everybody's just like, oh yeah, we've got 6.5 games left in this series. And sure enough, we came back. We were down 3-1 to the Pittsburgh Penguins, which have always been for decades a tough team. We came back and won that series.
What about the game 6? You come home, you're down 3-2 to Boston in the Eastern Conference Final. What are the memories of the 5-4 victory you had that night on home ice?
I think it was a blur. As Ryan's shaking his head, Adam's sort of smoke's coming out of his ears. I don't know about Hetty. Hetty's had enough celebration lately that he probably doesn't even remember way back then, and he was too young anyways. So, for me, thinking back, just believing in our team, understanding that we were never out of any situation, and on the bench it wasn't pandemonium like Pittsburgh. It was like, we got this. We could believe in ourselves, and sure enough, we ended up getting one. Momentum carried over, got another one, and so c'est la vie, and we're in Boston. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for us, but it gave us a chance for a chance to win.
Some guy says the refs suck. Rick Peckham reminded me earlier tonight there was no power plays in that game.
No
Not
power
one.
Plays. No power
plays. In a 1-0
plays.
game, you lost. There was only the one goal. You were goalie.
Sure, remember that.
Yeah.
And that was a tough way to go. But like these guys said too, like I was very young at the time. But, just the resiliency we had in our team coming back in that Pittsburgh series. I remember Steve White stood in front of us when we were down 3-1, and it was game 5 in Pittsburgh, I think. And I think that game we just took over that series, and then, Rolly played unbelievable, and then the Washington series, I think we swept them, right? And that was a pretty special group to be part of, that's for sure. Only my second year, my first year we missed the playoffs, obviously, but to go that far so early, you don't know how hard it is, because it took a while to get back there.
Matthew, you come in the next year. And you're platooning, you're tandem with Dwayne Rolston. Tell us about your indoctrination to Tampa Bay Lightning hockey.
Yeah, I remember Steve Yzerman calling and offering a contract, and I thought Tampa was a perfect fit for me. I knew Rolly was here. I played with Rolly in Edmonton, and he was kind of a mentor for me over there. So when I had the chance to come here, it was a no-brainer, and I'm very glad it was one of the best decisions in my life. It's a great city, great organization, and I'm still part of it. I'm very happy about it. Yeah.
Yes. You started with an organization where it's a hotbed. It's Alex's hometown there, Montreal. It's a great fan base here. I think we all know that, and everybody knows that, the league. It really is. But can you compare those two hockey worlds, where you came from, where you grew up, and here?
I think at the time it was a very big difference, but the more I see it the last few years, I think it's just becoming to look like a city, to Montreal or Toronto, those big cities, those big hockey towns. So I've seen the changes in the 10, 11 years I've been here. It's been day and night.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's part of it. He's still out there in the community relations department. with the hockey program at the grassroots level, so congratulations on all that work. So as we move forward here towards, the big years, the big back-to-back years, there were still some moments building there. You get to the Stanley Cup final again, and a young man arrives eventually from the American Hockey League, Alex Killorn. You came from Harvard, goes to the American League with Norfolk. You have all that success with Tyler Johnson, with Andre Palat, with John Cooper. Tell us about that whole transition for you and landing here and having all the success you had.
Yeah, I mean, for me, coming out of college, I didn't really expect much. I signed my NHL contract with, not thinking, it would take me a couple years at least to get in the NHL. And I joined a team that had won 19 straight games in the AHL. So it's, it's a little bit scary to jump in a situation like that. I think I was pretty fortunate that a lot of the guys in the AHL had been called up at the time. There were some injuries. Probably Bugsy and Teddy, hurt a shoulder or something. But because of that, I was given the opportunity to play right away. And then, things went well. I don't think we lost a game. We lost 2 games in the playoffs. And for my professional career, that was huge because I had a lot of confidence. And then the next year was a lockout season. No one played. And then once the lockout was over, I was given my first chance. And I got to play, with Bugsy, a lot of the guys before us that, laid the groundwork, like you guys were talking about, going in the Cup finals and stuff like that. So pretty fortunate. But that's how it started for me.
That's really what this. Sorry, go.
I think, Rolly, did you win the bet? It was like 8.5 minutes before Harvard was announced. Hetty said 45 seconds. So
Kobe came prepared.
The college guys stick together, so I picked 20 minutes.
Little bit
and it was
the
Dave
modesty.
Dave brought up Harvard. Okay,
Yeah.
it's.
We knew it was coming. We just didn't know when.
It's not Alex's fault, so we'll blame it on Dave, and he still wins the bet.
Technically, I think it was me, Alex. Sorry, you're getting busted here, but I think it was probably me. But anyway, Bugsy, what do you recall of this young man? Young man coming up.
This young man took my spot, actually. Cooper at camp's like, "Are you gonna keep up?" I'm like, "Keep up with like Marty and Stammer?" I'm like, "No, I'm not gonna keep up." Well, we got guys that can. I'm like, "Oh, I guess you do." But no, he's obviously wicked smart. But no, all those young guys, you see them have success there. I mean, Stevie Y, I think, is honestly, he was a great GM. He was very honest and open with kind of the leadership group that were here, even when we made moves, moving Downs and Smitty and those guys. And he let the leadership know these guys are coming up. They're coming to obviously push us to make the team better. And it's just great to see these guys have all the success that they have here. And it's great to see the city have all the success because all the love that Mr. Vinnick has put in there has been paying off. So it's just great to see.
No doubt, no doubt.
More with Victor Hedman and Alex Killorn on Back-to-Back Championships when A Night with the Bolt, presented by Advent Health, continues.
I only bring this storyline up because it is so really important to the history of this team, and that is the 2019 sweep loss. Again, hey, don't. It's an important. How important was that lesson for the group to eventually get to the top of the mountain twice? We'll start with you.
Yeah, I think just the way that whole season went, it was almost too easy, right? We kind of just railroaded everybody. Would you guys agree? Like, it was like, even when we played really bad, we won 5-2. I don't know how to explain it. Well, make no mistake, like we were embarrassed. I think, there was one of those things, you go into the off season and you're just like a deer in the headlights. You're like, we had a great season. It's awesome. But when it comes down to it, it matters what happens in playoffs. And we were embarrassed, we were humbled, and you go into that offseason and they didn't make any changes. And I think it was kind of a confidence boost in our group. It was, we believe in this group. You guys, it's up to you to figure it out. And, we knew we had the players and the personalities, and these guys have done a great job of building a culture. And you can see it today. Like, the culture's still alive and well. And you get a team, and I think, honestly, you're watching probably a golden era of Tampa Bay hockey, the last bit here.
Well said. So quickly, we'll touch on the 2 years, 2020. There were no changes. You all looked yourselves in the mirror, and you come out, you start playing, and then bang, everything shuts down. The world stops. You go off to wherever you're going, you restart, you go into a bubble. You got to play half the playoff run in Toronto, then you got to go all the way out to Edmonton, and ultimately you win it against the Dallas Stars in 6 games. Yeah. I mean, we could go on and on about that crazy first round game against Columbus that went, 5 overtimes, and the next round you beat Boston, and then Stammers, 1 shift. There's so many moments, but it's a cup, and it's the first one. Alex, what moment would you like to share with us?
Oh, you know what? There's one moment, and I know Stammer would want to be here, but he couldn't make it tonight. The one moment that I think about is when he came back and scored that goal. It's funny because I haven't told the story, but that day I was walking to the arena with Stammer, and no one knew, media, no one knew on Dallas that he was supposed to play because he hadn't really been practicing and he was taking no pregame warm-ups. And as Tampa, we had to walk by Dallas's dressing room. And I'll never forget to this day, Corey Perry was out cutting his stick. I swear to God this happened. And he looked up and saw Stammer walking. And because Stammer was walking, that meant he was going to take warm-up and potentially play. And I saw Corey Perry mouth like, oh, he's playing. And then, we take warm-ups, and Rick Bowness, who coached us, never came out for the warm-up. And that day he came out for the warm-up because he heard Stammer was going to be out there. And Stammer, obviously, only played that game, but, that goal was so big for us, for him to be a part of it, confidence-wise for our team. It was huge. So I guess that's one moment that stuck out to me that I'll always remember, especially because I play with Paris now, so it's funny kind of seeing him in that moment.
Time is short, so let's fast forward to the next year when they do it again. And, I was fortunate to have a closer front row seat to that whole season, and that first round against Florida, from an observer standpoint, from a broadcaster, was one of the most thrilling series, right? The 6-game series against the Florida Panthers, which really kind of kick-started everything. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely, that was mayhem. It
was mayhem from the drop of the puck.
Yeah, but that kind of started before the playoffs too. I think it was the last 2 games. I think it was good. He broke his hand, and it was kind of fights all over the place. And then it was just, it was a lot of fun to play in those games. But that was a tough fought series, and Florida was a great team. Still am to this day, obviously. But great rivalry, and obviously very happy we came out on top. But for us, that was a big one for us. And after that series, we felt like, here we go again. Let's do it. So. The first series is always the toughest, it feels like. Obviously not the toughest one, but, if you get through that one, that's when you feel like, you get even more confident that you have what it takes to go all the way.
Yeah, and it was nice to have 86 back in the lineup that night, too.
Yeah, it works.
Well, you have 3-4 points in game 1. It was just incredible. Then you move on, and I definitely remember, do we all remember game 7 against the Islanders? A 1-0 game. How intense that last 4 or 5 minutes was. Personally, I'll never forget it. How intense the feeling was in the building, Alex.
Yeah, I have friends that are Islanders fans. I feel bad for them because, they may have 2 cups if it wasn't for those 2 series. But, that series, looking back, may have been the hardest series I've played in my career. When you think about when we went to Long Island and had to play in that arena, I know you guys have all played there. The fans are just so hard to play with, and that team was built very defensively, and they're a well-structured team. And when you think about those last, we scored on the PK. that's how we scored. So it was so difficult to get anything in against them, but we felt like, you know, they were a great team, and we were just happy to beat them.
Yeah, short-handed goal by Yanni Gourde. Amazing. Raising the cup at home. I mean, if you go back and look at how many teams get to win it at home, it's really, actually, it happens way more on the road in the last 20 years. Again, an incredible moment for these fans to see, and I'm sure for you guys to experience that roar that night against the Montreal Canadiens and to raise the cup on home ice. Vic?
Yeah, pretty cool. No, that was, I mean, you can't really put that into words. Like, you think back at it right now, but yeah, what an unbelievable feeling having your parents here, my family, and obviously in front of our fans. You know, doing it in the bubble was obviously the first one, but doing it at home ice, and yeah, that was a very, very special feeling.
Alex?
Yeah. You know, winning the first one was obviously a dream come true. You never dreamed that you could win one, but it was definitely a different feeling just when you hoisted the cup, because, you know, there was no one in the building the first time. To do it in front of the fans who obviously, you know, care so much about the team, meant a lot. And, you know, I would have all my buddies and friends were sending me videos of me going around the arena with the cup, and it was just really cool, a cool moment, because no one left. It was really special.
30 years of hockey here. In 14 playoff seasons, 3 cups, the highest series winning percentage in the history of the National Hockey League is right there. And all these guys have been a part of it. What a night. Thank you all.
The Board of Governors of the National Hockey League have granted conditional franchises beginning in the 1992-93 season to the applicants representing the city of Tampa.
The Stanley Cup! All right, gentlemen, unveil the Stanley Cup banner! Possible from that face-off, throwing it in front. Lecavalier scores!
From the Sarnia Sting, Steven Stamkos.
Stamkos shoots, he scores!
The Tampa Bay Lightning are proud to select Victor Hedman.
He scores! Steven Stamkos has reached 60 goals!
Lightning win it! They win it! On to the final! Win the Stanley Cup! They have reached the top of the mountain for the second year in a row! Wow. They are the Stanley Cup champs!